Hello Multiverse, welcome to Omniverse Gamers. My name is Damien Bizzaio. This video is going to talk about DMing for a larger group. Now, obviously D&D was designed for a 4-person group, and it is kind of the ideal number to play with is 4. So you can do a lot of in-depth stuff and do a lot of tactical combat, and it goes kind of smoothly. The game really does facilitate 4 players. However, most of you have either less than 4 or more than 4. Pretty much, if you go up to 6 players, you can still kind of play normally. You still have to deal with action economy, but 6 players is pretty much the upper end of where a normal group would start. Anything 7 and above, I would consider a large group, and a lot of people will say, don't do it. You can't have groups that large. Just split it into 2 groups, or do whatever you can, because that's too many to run for a DM. And, you know, they're kind of not wrong, but also, I mean, I've run games. I run games up to 10 people now in 5th edition, no problem. Back in the 2nd edition days, I ran 14 people in the same game. It was Theater of the Mind. We were just all in one big room with one set of dice on the table. But 2nd edition was a different kind of game, and initiative worked differently, and timing around was a minute. So it was things that could be, like, I would call 20-player games with 2nd edition, which it worked. You know, it worked. They weren't great, but they, you know. So obviously, larger groups can be done. People do it all the time. But there are some things that you have to kind of be aware of to do it and know what you can and can't do in a larger game like that. One, it's going to be more of a social game. It's more about getting everybody together. That's why you have a large group, because you have a lot of people, and you're trying to get everybody a chance to play. So you're just like, you don't want to say no, or whatever the reason is. You have a lot of people playing. So there's things like you're not going to be able to get very deep into storyline. You can tell your own story, but you can't really get into everybody's little story, because, you know, if you have 10 players, everybody, even just introducing your character and describing it, you just lost, you know, half an hour of your time to just introduce characters, you know. Whereas you can kind of fast track that. You just gotta kind of accept that you're not gonna have a in-depth storyline or in-depth player agency kind of a game, because there's too many players to give agency to. 10 people are gonna pull the game. Now you can do it. It's gotta be slow. And you gotta, if you players want to be in depth like that and are patient players, you can do it. You can make 10 players work, but you got to have 10 really good players. You can't have passive people. You can't have people that want to be in the spotlight, because there's not going to be a spotlight. It's a stage. It's a stage. And obviously your combat is going to be different. Combat's going to take a long time, especially if you're fighting 10 people and you say, well, now I have to send 20 people after them to make it balanced. You're going to fight for 3 hours. Your combat with 10 people is going to take so long. So rather, as opposed to fielding more people, which seems the way to go, you want less enemies as a DM. Now, we'll talk about combat towards the end of this video. We're gonna try to go through different things that you can do to mitigate the aspect of playing with 10 people, which, I mean, it is going to be chaos. It's just going to be chaos, and you're not going to be able to have the depth that you want. You're going to have to be, as a DM, you have to be very organized, and you have to have focused players. You have to be ready to go as a DM. You have to have all your ducks in a row. Now, I say that, but I also run West Marches at a game store, which is a 3-hour session, at which people can just show up with it. If they have a character, I have a very set way to make characters. People can show up on a Friday night and just come play. I don't even know these people, so we can get up to, we went in from 5 to 10 people in that game with strangers, and I only have 3 hours, so we technically have one epic combat. I don't worry about minor. Why have a minor combat? If you have 10 players in a minor combat, only 3 people get to act, and it's over. You just had 7 people doing nothing. So what's the point? I mean, people say, oh, have little combats, not big combats with a larger group. But I would suggest the opposite. Have one epic have your session, have your role play, have your people interact. Have one epic combat that gets everybody involved. At least 2 turns. You want at least 2 rounds for everybody to have. After that, you can kind of mitigate it. But if you're gonna play for 3 hours with 10 people, you might get 1-2 turns of combat all night. And you want those to count, basically. So there's other things, like you don't have time for like rule discussions. You know, if you're 4 of you and you got the rogue has a weird thing he's trying to do, like, well, I think you should be able to do this and this. Just be like, just make a ruling. You don't have time to look it up, because your 9 other people are sitting there doing nothing. And along that same vein, when you're running big groups like that, like I love homebrew, and I have games where I run like ghosts and, you know, weird like Ninja Turtle. I have a Mole Man in my new game. Just different weird things that I don't mind running. But when I'm running a massive game like this, especially at a public place or with, you know, I try to keep it to only printed sources. If you can't, and you have to have the book. If you want a character from the Eberron book, you have to have that book, and you have to have it ready for me when you have a ruling. Because I have Eberron now. Before I had it, it's like, I don't mind you running it. It's a printed source. It's legal. But you have to have the answers that I need, because there's 10 of you. I don't have time to look at your Eberron book that I've never seen. I have to know what you're doing ahead of time, basically. You have to narrow down your focus. If you want to just have people in the player's handbook, that's actually the best way to go. If you have 10 people, just do player's handbook and your Xanathar. Keep your parameters very small. It's less logistics, especially because if it's a written source and there's an issue of rules, you have 10 of you at the table. Somebody you can Google that, and Jeremy Crawford will have answered that. It's already an official thing. Whereas if you're into homebrew and UA, it might be vague, and you're gonna have to make a ruling anyway. But at least if it's something that's already printed, it's probably already had a problem. Somebody's already had this problem and installed this. You can solve it a lot quicker that way because you kind of keep everything limited. Now there's some other tricks to running a large game. One is to keep every player. You have to, as a DM, you have to be aware of all the faces at your table and try to keep everybody involved. If you start losing people, you have to kind of involve them, ask them a question, or put something to them, or just things that you would make a perception check. The one that's not, say the person that's been quiet all night, I'll have them make a perception check. Just because they're in this corner, wherever they are, I'm going to have that encounter come at them because they've been quiet and they haven't really had a turn. Maybe they're shy. Maybe they don't want to talk. Maybe sometimes people just want to be passive and just watch the game, and that's fine. If you know that player just wants to come and watch and wants to be involved and roll dice and stuff, but doesn't really need to have a turn, say, have a spotlight, then let that player be. If they're happy just being along out of your 10 people, if you've got 2 or 3 people that are just happy being there, then they're done. They're cool. They just want to be in the experience and socialize and be with the people, and that's great. Actually, anybody you have in your large party that's like that is actually good. Then you have people that want to do things. They want to roll dice. They want to be involved with their character. But you gotta balance it all. You gotta balance it all with people that want to. You don't want somebody to take too much space. If someone's taking all the spotlight, you have 9 other people that aren't doing anything. 3 of them don't care. The other 5 want their character involved. So you have to make sure you keep track of who's talking, who hasn't talked. And just kind of keep everybody involved. That's very important with a group of 10 people, because as soon as you lose somebody and they're off, they go on their phone, they're not paying attention, your whole mood's going to drop down, and then you're going to have more and more bored people tapping out, shall I say. Whereas if you can just hey, that person, you see them start to, someone's tended to go on their phone, they start to get, well, what's your player doing right now? What's your character doing? And they have to, I have to pay attention. Yes, you do have to pay attention at all times. We have 10 people because we have 10 people. If you can't handle that, we're going to have to, when you start having to shrink, sometimes DMs, they can't do it. 10 is too many. They realize eventually I'm going to have to shorten this down. The players that aren't involved, that aren't helping, those are going to be the ones that are probably going to get dropped. If you're not paying attention, if you're not into the game, if you're not doing anything, you're going to be the one, when the DM cuts down from 10 to 6, you're going to be one of the 4 that aren't playing because you're just not, it's not the kind of game for you. You're not paying attention. So another thing, keep your stories very simple. I don't want to say simple, but you don't want anything too elaborate. You don't want too many things going. Keep it as complex as you can handle with the 10 people. We don't want it to flow. You can't really get into people's backstories as much because there's 10 backstories. If I have there's some games I have where I tell them, it's 4 players, say, give me your backstories. I will then invent the game based on their backstories because there's 4 of them. We can kind of do that. With 10 people, there's no way I can get everyone's backstory in every time, and we can do one at a time. But then that's a 10. It's gonna take 10 sessions for everybody to get something in. It's just not as feasible as a smaller game. But you can do it. But it's just try to keep your things more broad, more grand. Obviously, this is a large group. They're just coming to play together. They want to be together to have fun. We're not trying to, we're not rewriting Lord of the Rings. We're not being Critical Role. We're just playing with a lot of people because that's what we have. So we're just making it as fun as you possibly can for everybody at the table. Now, as far as that, now we're gonna get into some logistic stuff. Like for combat, and even I would say have a good battle track sheet. I'll show you. I'll put a link up to my battle track sheet, and I have a couple different ones that I use. Well, they're basically the same model, but I can expand the number of lines on the bottom, how many characters. I go from 4 up to 10, and I have one that's layer of 8, and it has 6 extra, because at the Westmarch game I play at the shop, well, we used to. We will again, but, things. But I have 8 players along the bottom ready to go, and people that are always there, the regulars are along the side, and I have 8 slots really ready to go. But then above that, I have another line of grayed out slots that I use for NPCs or stuff like that every now and then. But I can also, if I get suddenly more players show up, because you never know how many. We've had, we get up to 10, we get 12 sometimes. The conference table at the game store is huge, so we can, and the whole point is to get people to come into the game and play D&D. So it's like, yeah, come on in and play. We even have characters ready to go. So if somebody just shows up at the thing on Friday night, and I would like to play D&D, and come over Friday. You don't have to know anything. Here's a fighter, here's a rogue. We'll help you out. That's what we do. But having a good battle sheet is very important to track everything. And on top of that, also having, say all your enemies that you're gonna have fighting, and if you're using minis or whatever, have them in your brain, have the plan and already on your battle sheet. I'm gonna have an orc with a sword, I'm gonna have an orc with a spear, and I have an orc with a mace. My 3 minis. I'm gonna write that on my battle sheet ahead of time, so I don't have to sit there during battle and be like, oh, you hit the orc with this, you hit the orc with that. All the enemies I'm gonna field, I already have denoted on my battle sheet, ready to go. That just helps greatly. Now I don't always have that, but I'm pretty quick, and I have the template ready to go. So even if something unforeseen happens, I still can kind of do it. And if you're playing online, It's the same thing. You do put your little minis on, and put your little tokens out, and put the colors in them, like red, white, and blue. And on my battle sheet, I take crayon and I just color little circles: red, white, blue, green, pink, all the different colors. Roll 20 or whatever you're using. Will use. Already have that ready to go. I have 10 enemies. I've already colored them. I know on my battle sheet, green, red, they correspond to the token that I'm already using. Now, if you're running 10 people online, more power to you, because it's hard to, like, at a table, it's one thing, because you're a DM, your ears, basically your eyes and your ears can tell where sound's coming from, so you know if this guy's talking to you on the right or if this guy's on the left. And like Discord or something, it's all coming from the same spot. Now, I mean, I guess you can program Discord to come out of each speaker. There is a way to do that, but that's a whole other technical thing that we're not going to do that right now. Stereo surround, Another good thing that I do when big games, I do all my games now, I pre-roll initiative. We roll initiative when everyone's comes up to the table and it's already like, they're talking, they're milling around, they're getting their stuff out. I roll all my monster initiatives ahead of time. I put them up on my little thing. I get everybody's initiative roll ahead of time. I mark it down. I tally it out on a sheet, and then I don't give it to everybody else, but I tell them, and it's up to them if they want. I list this, and I usually do because I don't tell them what monsters they're going to fight. Obviously, I'll be like, the fighter's going to go first, the rogue's going to go next, the ranger's going to go next, and then I know they might fight orcs, and that's that. Next initiative, I'll do mystery guest number 1, and then I'll do that. Then the cleric goes next. Mystery guest number 2 might go next. Mystery guest number 3, just kind of, I have a list for them, and they can write that down if they want, which helps. It's not a big deal because every time I announce your turn, I'll be like, it's your turn. Next is this person. Next is that person. That alerts everybody that the next 2 people to be ready. It's not just, a lot of people say do the next person, which is a good idea. I do the next 2 because then the next person's ready to go, and the next person after that knows. When that person goes, now I'm up, now I'm next. And it just, it's not perfect, but at least they know, at least it's on them now. It's not just on you. Everybody, you have to all work together. If you're going to have a big group, make sure everyone's on the same page. Be like, this is a big group, I'm willing to run it, but you all have to pay attention and be on board. For 10 people to play, or even 7, you all have to be there with us. We have to all keep this moving. We all have to work together and not try to avoid side conversations and stuff like that. I mean, it'll happen, but just try to always push forward, and don't get mad when as a DM I'm like, hey, we got to move forward in this game. Like, this is what we're playing. We have 3 hours, we have 4 hours. This is what we're playing. We have to finish it. If you have all day, it's different. But even then, if you're playing for 8 hours and your character's only involved for 1 hour, you're gonna kind of feel, you want to keep everything moving. No, another thing, don't split the party. Don't split a 10-person party at the table. If you want to split the party, have 2 different games. Don't split the party in mid-game. Then 5 people are doing nothing. That's just gonna pull your vibe down wicked. It can be done. People do it. But it will pull your vibe down wicked. Then you have to somehow bring those people that weren't playing up to playing, and people that were all excited about playing, now they're like, oh, and they're doing nothing. So you're out. Anytime you split the party, you have half your group doing nothing, and you, the DM, are doing double. It's not a very good idea. I mean, there are times you do it, and there's drama and dramatic reasons and story reasons, but it's a good idea to just keep it one group, one cohesive unit, as cohesive as possible. Like I said, pre-rolling initiative, telling them or having a wait for they know the initiative is a good thing. A lot of groups like to have like a big board or something to say no initiative, or they do some people DMs do across the top of their screen. I don't have a screen, so I don't have that option. People use clothespins. You can take clothespins and write the character's name on them, and have like a poll and just click the clothespins on them that everybody can see. That's a good way to do it. I just like to do it verbally. I like to keep track of some people say have your players keep track of stuff, have your players do this and that, which in ways can help, but also as a DM, anything you're not tracking is something you're gonna have to figure out later. If I don't know your hit points, I don't know how much I don't know your armor class. That's wasting everyone's time for me to I roll a 27. I roll a 17. What's your armor class, fighter? They have to tell me that. I should already on my battle sheet. I already have their armor class, their passive perception, their hit points. I don't list spells they cast, but I have their spell slots ticked off, or keys, or rages. Anytime they do anything like that, I just tick off the little thing. I'll show you on the mat. On my battle sheet, you'll see how I have key. I have rages, whatever that character needs. Sometimes I have generic ones because, like I said, the Westmarch I don't know what they're gonna need, so I just have generic. I gray it out, and I have a couple options, and I pencil in when I need it. For my more standard groups, I have what I know they're going to need to tally right there. I do height checks and stuff like that underneath. The more as a DM you're tracking, the faster you're going to do it. I know have players track initiative, have players keep track of their own damage, and they should also be doing that. But you as a DM should be in control of everything. As a 10-player game, I feel like it's just faster if you know everything up here rather than you having to ask it. Just have it all ready to go. And on that same vein, this helps you keep your DM turn time down. Because say you're playing up 10 people and you have one guy that's really wounded, he's down to 3 hit points. You can hit him again, take him out of the game, but then nobody else is being involved, and you're taking his turn away next time and nobody else is involved. Whereas a normal game before you, my wizard is going to know that if you're down, he's going to take you out, he's going to murder you, because we're playing a story game, we're playing a drama. So I'm going to use more tactics as a wizard to take you out. Whereas a 10-player game, my goal is to keep everybody having fun. So I'm not going to take anybody out. You know, you need to have a really good tactical plan for your monsters. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I have my plan, my terrain level on round 3, my terrain's going to switch and change everything, which is another good thing to do. We'll talk about terrain changes because that keeps everybody alert. You know, if you're sitting on a flat plane attacking an orc, you're just rolling dice, blah 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 blah. But if you're on like a side of a cliff and you're fighting this orc, and then the orc does something, or like the shaman of the orcs casts like Earthwave, and it just slides the whole landslide down the way. Now you're all sliding down a landslide. Now everyone's involved sliding down a landslide while you're still fighting. You're not just fighting on the top of the cliff. You're sliding down the cliff. You can move all the minis or represent that some way. You're actively doing something more than just watching someone else take a turn. Now, oh my god, now I have to figure out what I'm going to do while I'm sliding, so it keeps you engaged. Terrain keeps you engaged. Like I said, use less enemies, not more. If I'm going to field 27 guys against your 10, that's 37 turns being taken in the game. That's just crazy. If you have to do that, try to roll your dice all together. There's ways, like if you're like a bunch of kobolds have pack tactics, you have to roll advantage. Have 2 green d20s, 2 blue d20s, 2 red d20s. They kind of keep 2 together, roll them all together. The 2 green ones are the advantage, the 2 red ones are the advantage. You know, it's a faster way to roll dice. But a larger creature that can do more, instead of having one creature doing one attack against 10 people, obviously that's not going to work. You need one creature with 8 arms, or that can do a bunch of different attacks. You want to be able to at least engage 3/4 of your party every turn. So if you have a group of 10, you're going to want to do at least 7 things. You're going to have one guy at least be able to do 7 things. Now, that can be, say he has 2 big giant slam attacks, or 2 big grapple attacks, or he has 1 big, like he just takes up something and sweeps it across the whole way, or where a wizard does an area attack. So you're doing one action, but you're involving a whole bunch of players. It's faster. It just works a lot faster. Like if I have a troll, say I have 2 giant attacks, but then I can take a rock, instead of throwing it at somebody, I can roll it. I roll it right through like a line, which is not how cannon works, but my line's going to hit 4 or 5 people. 4 or 5 people need a save. So if those 5 people just got involved, and then I have 2 other attacks with 2 other people, now I involve 7 people out of my 10 with 3 actions. It just, boom, it goes through really quickly. If you watch Matt Koval's video about action-oriented monsters, this is where you get that idea of concepts of monsters that you give extra actions to, bonus actions, reactions, do things on their turn. So if it's your turn, some like sorcerers and like rogues get rogues get a little bit. They can tactically turn and get 1 shot, but they're 1 shot and then they're done. A sorcerer's going to get 1 shot, save or die, or boom, their turn's done. So 30-second turn, whereas like a monk's going to take 4 attacks, a fighter's going to do all these attacks. Some spellcasters have a lot of options, so they're going to do this and this and this. They're going to take their turn a long time. Whereas if you take and do reactions during the players, like the sorcerer and the people that are going quick, use your reactions on their turn to make them more reactive. Like, oh, my sorcerer attacks. Oh, he misses. Oh, crap. My monster's reactions to do something to you. So now, even though, yeah, your turn sucked and you lost, and you were done in 30 seconds, now I'm giving you an option to do something. I'm extending your turn a little bit. Yes, it's taking the game longer, but it's going to be more fun. A really fun combat that's dynamic and takes an hour feels a lot quicker than a 30-minute combat on a flat plane that's just rolling dice. That's going to feel like it takes forever. You're doing nothing. Whereas if everything's happening, you keep the role play going through the combat, have motivations for your monsters. Like I harp that all the time. Your combat will be roleplay and exposition, so it will all blend in together. Especially with pre-rolling initiative, you just roleplay, and when somebody does something aggressive, you kick into initiative. You don't have to have that stoppage, rolling initiative. The fanfare from Final Fantasy goes off, and you turn to battle mode. You just smoothly push into it, keep it going, keep the game moving. Like I said, make sure everybody gets a turn. Ideally, you want your combats. I would do 1 epic combat in a 10-player game, rather than doing a bunch of little combats where some people might not even get to act. Have one, just build your whole session, build it towards the epic combat that's going to happen in the last hour, the last hour and a half, whatever you have. Make that epic. Make sure everybody at least gets 2 turns. Don't think in hit points. Think in how many rounds do I need this combat to last, and then you do the hit point tally based on that. If you start with I have 500 hit points, you have no idea what that means. One party could do 180 damage on the first round, another party could do 30 damage on the first round. So a lot of times what I do is I have variable hit points. I have that, might be this, might be this, might be that. I take however much damage they do the first round, I multiply that by the number of rounds I want this combat to last. So in the last few rounds are organic, it might be 2, might be 4, depending on how they roll, crits, and all that kind of stuff. But this way, you're presenting drama. You don't have to do the math. You're doing drama. This is about drama. There's 10 people. The math is too chaotic to do the math on 10 people. It's just there's no formula that is going to work for any a set group of 10 people. It's an art form. It's not a science. So along those veins, don't do anything that takes away a player's turn, if that makes sense. Like I always avoid that anyway. Even in any of my games, I don't take turns away from players. I don't DM that way. Things like paralyzation, hold person, sleep, banishment, anything that takes your turn away, I don't do that as a DM. I don't DM that way. I'd rather torture you. I'd rather give you a -8 with disadvantage than paralyze you and say, oh, your turn's done. You have one save throw against this, you're done. No, that's, even if you passed, your turn's done. That's, if you're only going to get 2 turns all night, why take their turn away? There's yes, it's a legitimate tactic and there's nothing wrong with doing that, but in my mind, if I can present another challenge to you better than taking your turn away from you, and if that's no fun. I'd rather give, like I said, I'd rather give you a -8 and disadvantage. At least you're having a turn and you can use your brain. Well, I get a -8 with disadvantage. Well, now I'm going to instead cast a spell or do something that requires you to make a saving throw. I'm going to make an athletics check. So now I have an opposed roll against you, so I have tactical ways to mitigate the disadvantage you gave me. So you're involved. Your brain's involved. It's not just like, oh, I'm paralyzed. I roll a save throw. I pass. Oh, I get to act next turn. Well, 9 other people are going to go, and I'm going to go. They may not get another turn. So let everybody have their 2 turns. And then, it's good to grab people and throw them. It's good to keep everybody involved. Always keep everybody involved in the game. That's really, really important. Another thing is to have your maps all ready to go. Have your map, whatever way you're going to map, or just drawing it, or on a graph paper, or on Roll20, have it ready to go. Have your maps. Like sometimes I like to draw it with crayon and in front of them, which I can do that pretty quickly because but I also have sometimes I have a graph paper like model that I'm ready to go. Like I can just kind of transpose. Sometimes it's not that I don't have it ready; it's in my head. I know the map that I'm going to draw, or they're going to go on this winding cavern that I'm going to draw as they go. You don't have to actually have it done, but have it ready. Know how you're going to present your map, and have that ready to go quickly. Make sure you don't spend 15-20 minutes setting up a map in a game with 10 people, because in just 20 minutes you just lost, and every second counts in the game with 10 people. Do your leveling, loot, stuff like that. Anything you get new, anything, do that outside session. Don't, we do our 3-hour session, they earn loot. We end our session at the game store by 10 o'clock. I say, yeah, I'll do the loot over the chat. I'll give you all your loot over the chat. So then they can go over the chat over the week and do their loot. So I don't have to, you're not wasting game time. Like, oh, should you have this? Should I have this? Who should have this sword of +2, blah, blah, blah. There's 10 of them. That's just going to be, it's fun, and that's fun. And sometimes we do it, we'll do it over the chat, and then the game starts at 7. People get there at the store before, and they can do it. They can kind of trade and do stuff like that ahead of time. I don't mind them trading stuff like that if it's quick. But once we start playing, that stuff's done. There's no more leveling. There's no more logistics, player logistics. We're just going to play because we don't only have so much time. Like I said, keep the RP going. Have your monsters have motivations, so they have to keep the role playing going. I know that if you're using minis, the thing I do with a lot of people, if I have a lot of minis that I'm fielding, every other turn, I'll take the minis and turn them. So the first round, every mini I have, I'll have facing me. When I put them out, I'll face me. After they act on the first turn, one guy, I turn him so he's facing the other direction. Every mini that I use, I turn. So I don't have to tally on my sheet who acted. I know this guy went, he's facing away from me. This guy hasn't gone, he's still facing me. I turn him away from me. I act this guy, I turn away from me. This guy act, turn away from me. It's just quick. It's bam. My logistics are done. I roll dice. I know I'm done. On my next DM turn, it's the opposite. I take those ones that are away from me. This guy acts, I turn him back towards me. This guy acts, I turn him back towards me. Every odd or even round, I have them facing away or again. And again, I don't have to track physically. I don't have to track who's gone because I can visually see it, and the players can see who's gone, who hasn't gone. It doesn't look as good on the table because the minis aren't facing off with each other. They're facing, but I mean, the minis are there for tactical reasons, not for, you know what I mean? With a 10-player game, logistics is more important than visualization. So, yeah, that was just a bunch of techniques that I use to run massive games, because like I said, I run 10-player games. Now I do prefer running a 4-player game. Especially recently, I like to get really deep and really tactical and really into a 4-player game. But it is fun to run 10 people. Sometimes a lot of people, it's just fun, or you just have your group grows, you don't want to say no to anybody, everyone's just kind of, you have couples, sometimes you have 5 couples and you just have 10 people, that's just what you got. You just got to work it out. As long as you have this physical space, like at the store, I say bring it on. I'll run as many as you can. Like I've run up to 20 people before in 2nd edition. 3rd edition couldn't really support that as much. Sort of a 3rd edition combat with 20 people would take 2-3 hours easy. A 5th edition can be slow, but there are ways in 5th edition to make it faster. 5th edition is so moldable that you can shrink it without losing it, because the tactics aren't really grand anyway. It's more about the spatial and the motivations. So it's really easy to nerf that down. So I hope this video was interesting or give you some ideas of how to run large combats. Any questions or comments, put them down below. I'm happy to answer other techniques. I might have forgotten some things that I use. I try to, make sure I plan this out. But Sometimes I forget things. But yeah, you can run large groups. It can be done. There are things you can't do. You just gotta kind of accept the kind of game that you're running, but you can have a good time doing it. And I hope this helps you guys with ways to do that. And if you have any other ideas that I didn't think of, please definitely put them down below. I'll add it to my next video or whatever. So yeah, we are Omniverse Gamers. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. I hope to see you soon, and keep on gaming.